Hey gang, this is Matt the Old Florida Boy. Once again, I'm back with you from the wonderful Central Florida swamps. And I haven't been on for a while because of a couple of things. One, it was really too hot to go out and do any videos. And two, about 6 weeks ago, I injured my back behind my left shoulder pretty bad. It still hurts, but at least I'm able to get out of here. Talk about injuring yourself. I want everybody, if they could, to drop a get well soon comment down below to my brother Mike. A week ago he just had his right hip replaced, and you know he's really wants to come out and do some videos, so he watches these videos with me and reads the comments. So if everybody could leave him a get well soon comment below, it would mean a lot to him. But back to the matter at hand. I've been looking for a place, a piece of property that I could go and establish a base camp that wasn't a public area or a wildlife management area or someplace where a lot of people are going to go. You know, it's really not cool during hunting season to go out in a wildlife management area, because that's a public hunting area and people are hunting out there. And hunting season down here is the nice time of year for us. You know, the rest of the year it's 112 degrees. But I found a piece of property that I'm allowed to go, and my brother actually found it, and I went out here about 6 weeks ago, and I've gone all around here and figured out what I need to figure out, and I've established 3 places that I'm going to try to develop kind of a base camp. And what I want to do is this is your channel, this is YouTube's channel. I'm taking suggestions on which site you think I should do, what type of shelter you think I should build, what type of fire pit you think I should build. I'm taking suggestions, and while I have the most input, I'm going to take input from everybody. But here is site number 1, and no one's been out in these woods for ever, like at least 20-25 years. I know the history of this land, and I'm allowed to be out here. It's not my land, it's not in my backyard. It takes me like an hour to drive and walk here. So here is site number 1. As you can see, it's right up against the swamp, and there's a lot of pines and oaks, and let me show you around. Okay, so here it is. This is what I'm working with. I mean, that's the swamp, and there's a creek over there, but there's a lot of cool trees. There's a nice palm tree there, there's an oak tree right in the middle, there's pines. You know, there's some couple of nice pines. You could hang a ridge line, put a hammock, do all kinds of stuff. And you don't see my backyard, do you? You don't see the back of my house? That's because my house is an hour away. I'm not in my backyard. That's my hat, by the way, because I'm out here with my scruffy hair and my scruffy beard. Okay, so that is what I'm working with. This is site number 1. There's some good parts about these sites and some not so good parts about these sites that I'm going to go over. This is site number 1. There's really no bad parts about any of it out here. This is site number 1. The good parts are, I just showed you, there's a lot of nice pine trees. And these 2 pine trees are about, I don't know, 10, 12 feet apart. Perfect for a ridge line. Perfect to put a tent or a tarp up or kind of shelter. You know, but also perfect that if I wanted to build some kind of shelter, whether it's, you know, like a shelter like that or an A-frame type of shelter, you guys are going to have input. Tell me what type of shelter you think I ought to build. And whatever type of shelter I build, it's going to be out of native materials. There's so much natural resources to work with out here that I don't have to bring out any 2x4s or duct tape or plastic wrap. I don't have to dig a hole in the ground and do a fort like I was 10 years old. I'm not 10 years old. I'm going to try to make my own cordage. I'm going to try to make whatever I need to make, you know, to make this shelter out of. So this is site number 1. The good part about it is there's all kinds of natural resources. There's palm meadows, there's saw palm meadows, there's pine, there's oak, there's everything. The bad parts are this. If I wanted to do some kind of fire pit, this is what I'm working with on the ground. This is pine needles. And the deeper you dig, you come into more pine needles and layers and layers and layers. These things have been deposited over the course of decades. And when you get below the pine needles, it turns into peat. And that's even worse for a fire or a fire area, because you get what's called a muck fire if the peat catches on fire. And a muck fire will burn for days and weeks and months, and it'll pop up someplace miles away because the fire will actually burn underground. So I got an idea on how to make a fire area if I choose this site. The hogs have rooted up a big area right over there, and walking into here, I saw a flock of wild turkeys like literally 50 yards away, and it was pretty cool. And the hogs have rooted up a big area over there, and they've churned up a lot of dirt. So I got a lot of dirt to use because there's no dirt right here, but there's tons of natural resources and tons of nice solid pines and oaks. This is site number 1. Also, I don't know whether you saw, this is a big canopy of trees. There's no widowmakers. There's nothing. Everything is nice and alive and green. But it's not too open up there, okay? This is just a big canopy of trees. So this is site number 1. Now let me take you a couple hundred yards this way, and all 3 of these sites are within a few hundred yards of each other. So let me take you a couple hundred yards to the southeast, and I'll show you site number 2. All right, here we are at site number 2, about 200 yards southeast of site number 1. This site has some advantages and some disadvantages also. As you can see behind me, site number 2 is up against the swamp. And yes, that is an old fence post right there. I know what that's for, and I know what that's from. It's been there for a long time. That is a cut through in the swamp that eventually, it's all dry right now, but eventually that'll be wet. It doesn't flood, and it doesn't get wet out here. But we got some more nice oak trees over here. We got some other trees. We got some pines over there, which is interesting. But we have a big open area here, which is really, really cool. There's a 360-degree view of what I'm working with. There's not a lot of places to set up ridge lines because there's not a lot of available trees. You know, there's a couple of oaks behind me where you could set up a ridge line, you could set up a tarp, or you could set up a tent, or like the Benvo mesh tent, or you know, the U.S. military pup tent, you know, would go right back there, really, really good in the back of the swamp. But this place has the advantage of right in front of me and right down here. This is not pine needles. This is just some oak leaves, and below the oak leaves is sand. That's really, really cool. So now I can come out here in the open, and that's what I'm working with in the opening. It's a big open space right in the middle. You can see the clouds at night, you can see the stars. You know, I would be able to dig a nice fire pit or a Dakota fire pit or anything else that I wanted to put out here. This is really, really nice and open. So I could set up a freestanding tent like the U.S. military pup tent, or another, like a trekking pole tent, my River Country Products Trekker 1A. I could set that up right here. It's nice flat ground and nice and sandy, and I could sit around the fire pit and bring myself some liquid refreshments and have a good time. But this has the advantage of being in a clearing and a better place for a fire. But the disadvantage is there's no real trees. It would be harder to set up a campsite here. So this is site number 2. Site number 1, really cool. Advantages and disadvantages. Site number 2, really, really cool, nice and open. Advantages and disadvantages. Once again, this ain't nowhere close to my backyard. So now I'm gonna go farther to the southeast along the side of this swamp line, and we're gonna go check out site number 3. Okay, so here we are at site number 3. This is a larger opening. This is kind of a small field, And I actually saw this on the aerial photos, so I had to come back and check it out. And I'm surprised that I made it back here, but I found exactly where I saw. And you can see behind me, there is another cut through area in the swamp. Okay, and you can see where the hogs have been right around there, where they've turned up all the dirt. And this is right back up against the swamp. And now we get to the opening right outside the swamp. And this is a nice large opening. There's a 360-degree view. I want to take you over there in a second and show you that. That's an alternate number 3 site. But this is a nice opening. And this is probably, you know, 1/10 of an acre opening. And you can see this is all sand. That's all sand. So you're talking nice fire pit right over here. And being an opening, there ain't many trees to set up too much. But if you walk right over here to the edge of the opening, look what we got. Look what we got right here. We got ourselves a couple of nice oaks, you know, nice backdrop to a shelter. We got a big pine, some other smaller oaks, some other smaller trees here. Really, really, really nice distance apart, about 8 feet, 10 feet. Could make a nice shelter facing this way. You'd be out of the afternoon sun. Then you could, because this is all sand, you could make a fire pit right here. Or you can go out in this opening and make your fire pit. This is a really, really nice open space for a camp. I'll take you back to where I started the video. And this is just, look at this open sky you would have. I mean, this is just an unbelievable sight. Once again, this site has some advantages, and this site has some disadvantages too. You know, it's a nice big, kind of a small field. There ain't many trees that you could do too much on. There's really these 3 oak trees right behind me are pretty much right at the edge of the swamp. There's really not a heck of a lot you could do out here, and this is as big a big enough opening to where it's growing some grass. It's growing some field grass in it, you know. So it's not as flat as site number 2. But you could easily set up a tent. You could easily make a fire pit. You know, again, great for a freestanding tent like the Trekker 1A or the Benvo mesh tent that you can use trekking poles on, or the U.S. military pup tent would be awesome out here. But I want to take you over here and show you just what I was looking at. And this is only 50 or 60 yards away under these oak trees. So let's go over there and I'm going to show you that. Okay, so this is about 50 yards from where I was just standing at the edge of that small clearing. And this is right on the side of the swamp. Look at these huge oak trees. And it's another nice opening. But look under these oaks. This is like, look how flat the ground is. This is like its own little clearing and its own little house. You would be totally shaded. You know, no dead stuff, no real widowmakers up there. Here's another nice clearing right out here that you could use, but this would, and the oaks just keep going and going. This would be a great place. All right, this would be a great place under these oak trees. If it rained, you wouldn't even hardly get wet out here. And you know, the oak trees are a little too far apart for a ridge line or a shelter, but I could dig some holes and put some pine posts in here and kind of, I don't know, but if you were just camping, this would be a great place to come and set up, man. You could dig fire pit over there. You could, that right over there about 50 yards is where I just was. You could go dig a nice fire pit over there and just walk over here to your tents and stuff, and everything will be right here covered. You can't see anywhere, anything. I mean, I would call this site number 3A. So we have site number 1, which is over there, a few hundred yards. We got site number 2, which is over there, about 150 yards. And we got site number 3, which is over here, about 40 yards. And this is site number 3A. Again, there's nothing out here. There's no people out here. I'm not going to tell you where this is because that would spoil it. And how do I know there hasn't been any people out here? There's no trash, there's no garbage, there's no beer cans, there's no water bottles, there's absolutely nothing. This is pure virgin Florida wilderness. It's probably looked like this for the last couple hundred years. And the natural resources are all over the place. There's downfall. I'm not going to have to cut any trees. I'm going to try to do some kind of shelter, and we're going to get into that later. I'm going to try to do it without cutting any live trees, and I'm going to try to do it with as much natural resources as I can. I'll probably need a couple of pieces of rope, but here we go. Number 1 in the series, site selection. Let me know in the comments below whether you think I should go on site number 1, site number 2, or site number 3 with an extension into site 3A. I really value your comments, and I know which one that I'm leaning towards. They all have good points and not so good points. There's really no bad points about this at all. But I know which one that I'm leaning toward, but I want to know your opinion of which site that I ought to do. And remember, please drop a comment to my brother Mike, who's recovering from hip replacement surgery a week ago. Please drop a comment below and give him a get well soon. He should be out here with me as soon as his hip gets better. And we're going to be doing some videos. It's nice to be able to do videos with your brother. If you have a brother, take advantage of it while you have the time. So, once again, this is Matt the Old Florida Boy, out in my wonderful new place. No hunters, no people, no nothing. And this is all mine. And I will see you on the trail.